Hey team, and welcome back to the channel. Ryan here, going to walk you through some magical elections that we have coming up after our Pisces New Moon. So the Pisces New Moon is of course the final new moon for the astrological year before our spring equinox. And this one is actually going to be our, of course, final new moon before we get into eclipse season. So that's its own kind of special brand of cosmic horror story. But we do have a number of pretty good elections for talismans to kind of get us through and help us out during the more difficult eclipse seasons that are going to be coming our way. I'm joined by Blossom here. Let me see if you can see her. I'm joined by Blossom here, who is probably blurry because she's not in focus, and Sleepy because she's just had dinner. So she's going to help me walk you through what elections we have coming up. I apologize if there's like a noise. I have a fan on because it's hot already in Texas. What a shock. What a nightmare. Why am I in this nightmare? But we do have a good number of elections to talk about. So let's go ahead and meet our contenders. So our first opportunity is going to be for a third Lunar Mansion talisman. If you've been here at all, you probably have heard that the third Lunar Mansion is my favorite. It's the first Lunar Mansion talisman I ever made and had really great success with, and it's one that I recommend to a lot of people, especially if they're only just getting started with astrological magic, because it seems to be the easiest. It's very flexible for what it can do, and tends to make a pretty good story. The third Lunar Mansion is also one that up until a couple of months ago, probably a little bit longer than that, we really struggled to find good elections for because the nodes were hanging out here, and when the node is in a mansion, it's almost impossible to find a good election for that mansion. You have to wait until the node moves out into the next mansion and then kind of give it some space still. But now the third Lunar Mansion is pretty in the clear. So we were able to make some fun stuff with it. And we had a third Lunar Mansion last month too, so you're kind of starting to see that pick up. But we're going to lose that as the sun moves through it, because then it'll be waning, and waning third Lunar Mansion talismans aren't really helpful for a whole lot of stuff. The third Lunar Mansion is useful for the acquisition of all good things, so that's what I mean by it's like very flexible sort of power. Good things are, pretty a pretty wide category, so there's a lot there for people to be able to kind of choose from and approach whatever sort of situation they're dealing with. The third Lunar Mansion probably has some way out or some way that it can help you accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to do, as long as it's a good thing. It also has more kind of like specific uses for being helpful for those who like work with fire or who are interested in pursuing like various alchemical works. If like you're interested in alchemy at all, internal alchemy, external alchemy, whatever, the third Lunar Mansion is very helpful for that. So that's the third Lunar Mansion, just a really great mansion to have, really great talisman to have in your pocket for anything you might need, sort of whenever the need arises. So whenever you can find a good election for it, make sure to take advantage of it. But for our North American version of this election, it's going to take place on March 12th at around 15:43, so about, what is this, like about 3:45 in the afternoon. And in this chart, we're going to have the moon on the midheaven in the third mansion, and she's going to be applying the sextile to Venus. So, especially when it comes to like the third Lunar Mansion who wants to do good things, it's important to have a connection with Venus, the Sun, or Jupiter. Those are really the only three that you want. You might be able to make some argument for like a really good Mercury, like if Mercury was like in Virgo or something, then that's something I could be persuaded to accept, especially if the kind of good thing that you were wanting was something that was a bit more Mercury related, like I like helping paperwork clear or like stuff like that, just like Mercury related good things. I could definitely see some. I could be persuaded to accept a Mercury connection. Saturn and Mars with the third Lunar Mansion. I guess you could have it. Especially kind of going back to the Mercury thing, especially if it was something that was being used specifically for like a Mars or a Saturn type thing, then I could see that being helpful. But really keep it with the three benefics, the three graces. They're going to get you the most, bang for your buck. You also don't have to be as specific like you do if you use Saturn or Mars or Mercury. They you kind of are contained within their kingdom to get the most out of that connection, whereas Jupiter, Venus, and the Sun are much more generally benefic, so are able to do like a lot more and kind of like twist and turn with what's necessary. So this connection with this Venus and Pisces is very good, very nice. The ruler of the first house is going to be the sun here in Pisces, conjoined the cusp of the ninth house. The sun is not affected by Mars or Saturn. We're past that Saturn Kazemi, that conjunction there. We're not aspecting Mars. And the ascendant itself is free from the difficult aspects of Mars and Saturn, as is the moon. So all in all, just a really good structure for a third lunar mansion talisman to be able to take advantage of. I kind of feel like last month's third lunar mansion talisman was better, especially the one that was for like Central and Mountain Time in North America specifically, just because they were able to take advantage of that really nice Moon Jupiter conjunction being really close on the ascendant and stuff. And that's pretty powerful whenever you can have that. Here, the connection to the Venus in Pisces is nothing to shake a stick at. Like, that's Venus in her exaltation. That's pretty good. But yeah, there's really something to be said about like that immediacy and that being like right on top of one another on the ascendant that you get a lot out of. So unfortunately, there's no Western European version of the third lunar mansion, which is a pretty big bummer. But Australia is able to take advantage of it, and there your election is going to be on March 13th at around 10:06 a.m. And it's pretty similar to the North American version, except it's centered on the ascendant rather than the midheaven like the North American version was. So here we've got the moon in the third lunar mansion on the ascendant. Still, like, we have now like that closer connection with the moon than we did in the North American version. This one is just like 2 degrees apart, whereas the North American one was like 4 or 5. But now we have Mars as the ruler of the first house. Mars here in Aquarius, and Mars is unafflicted by Saturn or the sun. Neither is the ascendant, the moon isn't. So again, just a really good connection with that. And we're even able to take advantage a little bit of the Jupiter being placed in the first house. So this one I think is a pretty strong contender. I don't remember if Australia had a good third lunar mansion election. I threw those notes away last month, but if not, this is a good one. So if you felt like you missed out last month, here's your opportunity. And if that one was fine, then here's another fine one. So just make 2 third lunar mansion talismans, glue them together, and then you have like a super third lunar mansion talisman. Have a third lunar mansion talisman, wear another third lunar mansion talisman as a cape. What could go wrong? So our next election, well, I guess the better way to go with this is an interesting month because there are 2 moon planetary talisman elections that we can take advantage of for North America specifically. So North America kind of lucks out on this one. Western Europe gets to get on it a little bit, and then then Australia has to miss out on it entirely. So apologies to those of you in Australia who have been looking for a moon, like a moon planetary talisman. That's just not something I'm going to be able to do for you because obviously I'm in charge and I make these decisions. But folks in North America, Western Europe, and Northern Africa should be able to do something with this. So there's 2 different moon elections, one in Taurus, the other in Cancer, and we're going to go ahead and kind of cover them both, even though Australia has a different kind of unique opportunity in the middle of this that we'll cover afterwards, just because if I talk about them separately, it'll be kind of weird. So our first one is going to be the moon in Taurus, and it's not what I would call exactly ideal. There are some placements in it that are a little bit not what we would want. I don't even want to say that. They're placements that are fine, but it's just like the textbook description of like a perfect moon talisman doesn't quite line up with this, and we'll see why. So this is March 13th at around 15:43, just like the day after the third lunar mansion one. And we're going to have the moon in Taurus in her exaltation, close to the midheaven. She's still the most angular planet in the chart. Here she is. And she's going to be applying this conjunction to Jupiter in Taurus as well. The moon is waxing, which is good. The ruler of the first house is the sun, conjoined the cusp of the ninth house. The moon is not square Mars, not afflicted by Saturn, visible in the sky, and the sun is not affected by those malefic planets either. So it's also the moon's hour at this point in time. So make sure to double check that because it does happen on a Wednesday, which is Mercury's day. So you need to fine tune the hour. And that's why the moon is not exactly conjoined the midheaven like we would want. Because by the time she gets to the midheaven, we move into a different hour. We move into Saturn's hour. And you don't want Mercury-Saturn. You don't want Mercury's day and Saturn's hour during a moon talisman. It doesn't quite work out very well. So you have to keep the moon hour. But I mean, everything's here. Like the moon's the most angular. She's applying to a good planet, which is what you would want in a moon talisman. The moon has to do things a little bit differently. Typically with planetary talismans, you want the moon to apply to that planet. So like in a Mars talisman, you would want the moon to be applying to Mars. But the moon can't apply to herself. So the moon needs to apply to a planet that is, I would say, generally benefic, and a little aligned to what it is that you want. Jupiter as the greater benefic has the most kind of like flexibility for what kind of good things or whatever he can bring. Also being in Taurus, I think, is very nice because that's the moon's exaltation, so we kind of are bringing something extra moony into it. And then the moon waxing moons are going to be for developing things, for augmenting things, for making things better, for gaining new things. And you can make waning moon planetary talismans. Absolutely you can. Those are going to be more for, those are going to be more for waning type activities, like getting rid of, letting go, dismissing, banishing kind of things. But the waxing, we're going to try to stick to waxing here. So the moon, that's what the moon has to do things a little bit differently. That's why the planet that the moon applies to is a little bit more important, but also maybe not exactly what you would have thought. But yeah, everything is here. The only thing that prevents it from being like the perfect election is if we could have the moon like right here on top of the midheaven, and we can't because by the time that happens, it is it's changed to Saturn's hour, and that's no bueno. Oh, the other thing too is that the moon is in her decan. In this, the second decan of Taurus is ruled by the moon, and decan talismans technically are done a little bit differently. My eye, something keeps getting in my eye. I'm sorry. Decan talismans are technically done a little bit differently, where you would want the moon in this decan and the sun on the ascendant, and the moon like in aspect to the sun, which you're probably not going to be able to get because it also has to be like the sun's day or something. I forget. I should know, but I don't think decans are real. that's my hot take. I'm not convinced decans are real. My patrons know what I'm talking about. So that's the moon in Taurus election. That's only available for North America. North America, Western Europe, Northern Africa will also have access to a moon in Cancer talisman. So if you prefer the moon in Cancer to the moon in Taurus, North America, you have options. Western Europe, Northern Africa, you lucked out. For those of you in those places who would have preferred the moon in Taurus talisman, sorry, I can't change it. But this is a little bit more of what I would consider like an ideal setup for a moon talisman. So here we have the moon in Cancer in her sign of domicile on the ascendant, and we are able to stick her very close to the ascendant in this one. And here she's applying a trine to the sun. So we still have that waxing moon in Cancer, coming to like the waxing trine. So we've got what I would say would be like the perfect moon phase to make a lunar talisman for. Just because I like the waxing trine, and I like the waning sextiles. Those are my favorite moon phases. And so like we've got that. The moon's in Cancer, the sun's in Pisces. It would have been super cool if the sun was able to be in Aries when this happened, but alas, just like how fun would that be? But it is the moon's day for North America. This happens on Monday. So we've got all of our pieces here. The moon is unafflicted by Saturn or Mars. She's also the ruler of the first house, so we don't have to worry about another planet. We could even say that she's got this separating sextile with Jupiter going on, with like the ascendant, and there's this nice Jupiter in the 11th house aspecting this and helping it out. So yeah, if you've been in the market for a moon talisman at all, here you go. Oh, I bet the one thing that makes this not super awesome. Let me find out. Not results. Oh, I don't know what that button was. I just clicked. Let me see. Close. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, so the one thing that keeps this from being like a super awesome knock it out of the park talisman is this right here, the velocity, how fast the moon is going. And the moon is going really slow right now because the apogee is in... Oh, that's not right. The apogee is in Virgo. So the apogee is like right here. So she's getting slower, kind of slowing down to come to it. So that's the one thing that makes this not a super awesome knock it out of the park talisman, is that the moon here is slow. She was faster in Taurus, North America, if you're listening still. She was faster in Taurus. So maybe that's a consideration that you're thinking about. And moon talismans that have a slow moon obviously will, like normal, like regular, like any other garden variety talisman, slow moon tends to slow it down, what it can do. Oh, and I guess the other thing too, while we're talking about it, is the trine to the sun. While awesome, it's like 11 degrees out, which is pretty far. So I would say two things that make it, that kind of knock it down, and I guess if we're giving them scores, we would penalize them. We would penalize this election for that. But I mean, everything else is here. Everything that you need is here. Got a nice connection to a good planet that can help us out. Moon's angular, inner domicile. What else could you want? Don't be picky. The perfect is the enemy of the good. And then the Western European version of this chart is very similar. It takes place on the 18th of March at 12:11, so just after noon. Hurry up and have a quick lunch, or you make this talisman on your lunch break. Who needs to eat? Certainly not people making a moon talisman. What is food? Like a nourishment for your body? That's silly. The moon doesn't care about that. She does. She wants that. She wants you to take care of yourself. So for this chart, we have kind of a lot of the same things that we did for the North American version. The moon is on the ascendant in Cancer, which is great. It's a Monday, which is great. But what's different is because the moon is further back in the Western Europe and Northern African version, she's actually applying this really close sextile to Jupiter in Taurus. So there's this really neat kind of like mutual reception going on where the moon in Cancer receives Saturn into her exaltation, and then Jupiter in Taurus receives the moon into his exaltation. So there's this really nice little mutual reception happening here. It's still the kind of that waxing gibbous, that trine with the sun aspect here, the waxing trine, which makes it really great. Saturn is kind of angular here. I don't really care for that very much, but maybe you live somewhere where this isn't a thing. Just delete that. That's gonna be very location specific. So if you're not there, that's not gonna be a super big deal for a lot of people. But that's probably the one thing that I don't super care about very much, or that I don't like. We do still have that the slowest moon. The moon is still slow because that's just how that works. But we no longer have that kind of gap between the moon and her next aspect like we did in the North American version. We have it much tighter, which is going to help out a lot. We have a connection with this nice Jupiter, and we have a really nice mutual reception to back it up. So I'm going to say, I don't care if you have an angular Saturn. It's not afflicting anybody necessarily. So we're just going to put our thumb over it. We're just going to color it in. We're just going to say, he's not here right now. Done. Fixed it. You're welcome. So I mentioned something about like Australia having a different unique election because they weren't able to do the moon stuff. And now I'm not sure what I did. So I wrote down 316, 0701, 21 degrees Pisces, 6 Lunar Mansion. And I'm not sure what I was doing. So I set it for that time. 21 degrees Pisces, I write down the ascendant degree just so I can double check it easy. 21 degrees Pisces, this is March 16th. Australia. But I don't know why I would do a 6 Lunar Mansion talisman where the moon is applying like a sextile to Mercury. I don't know what Mercury has to do with like... That's a weird planet for me to be like, you know what, that would make a great 6 Lunar Mansion talisman, because the 6 Lunar Mansion is about like love and relationships and stuff. And who knows more about love and relationships than like Mercury and Aries, right? Who would have thought? Who like talk about the love guru? But the weirdest part of it all is like, why would I write this down? Seeing this moon square to Saturn in like 2 degrees. What am I? I don't know what I don't know. So I don't know what yesterday Ryan was doing, or thinking, or on when he wrote that down, but I guess I lied, and Australia does not have a 6 Lunar Mansion talisman election. Take advantage. Is the moon even in the 6 Lunar Mansion? I don't know. I don't have my book. So I don't know what that was about, but please enjoy. Please enjoy whatever the hell this is. Oh, maybe this is what I was thinking of. Maybe I wrote this down. I don't know. Maybe I wrote this down and then was like, never mind, and forgot to cross it out. And then I found this other one, and maybe that's what I was thinking of. So Australia does have like a unique election. Yes, this is unique. So this is unique to Australia. It's a 9th Lunar Mansion talisman. And the 9th Lunar Mansion is a mansion that is very much about like magical protection, safeguarding. And in a waning moon, we could use it like offensively. We could use it for cursing if that was something that we wanted to do. Don't recommend it, but I'm not your mama. Or like banishing, or anything along those lines. Any sort of like getting rid of, clearing the clutter, the 9th Lunar Mansion is very helpful with. In a waxing moon, we're using it more protectively. We're using it more to like keep us from having to do that. It's a bit more preventative when we're in the waxing moon, and a bit more, helping us keep our boundaries up, and have other people respect our boundaries, that kind of thing. So in our election here for the ninth mansion, we're going to have the moon in the ninth mansion, and she's going to be applying a trine to the sun. She's going to have that nice waxing gibbous, that nice waxing trine energy from the sun. The moon's going to rule the first house here, and she's not going to be afflicted by Mars or Saturn. And she's because she rules the first house, we don't have to worry about another planet taken care of. So when we're applying to the sun's a really great planet to work with in a lot of instances. I've said it, before. I say it, a million times. I really like moon-sun aspects in a lot of the different lunar mansions, especially ones where we're talking about like protection or health or anything like that, or banishing, or just anything like that. The sun is really good at doing those jobs. So having this moon connection with the sun helps us to ensure that strength, that I'm going to use the word purity. I don't know if that's like a super great word, but just sort of that calm and that sort of holiness to kind of counteract any of like the shadow darkness, like what that other people or like the negativity that might be like put upon us, or that we might kind of catch on against. Hey team, this is Ryan in editing. So as I was editing and putting everything together, I saw that while I was recording after this part, while I was trying to set up the conversation about why this chart wouldn't work as a Moon and Cancer talisman, the microphone briefly cut out, and then when it came back, the gain or some sort of thing had changed on it to where it was much louder and the fan sound was much more noticeable. And I also noticed that it kind of messed with how I sounded. So I went ahead and turned it back down on my end in this edited video. But if it sounds different, that's why. That's what's happened. There was some weird technical issue on my end while I was recording. It's not you. It's not on your end. It's not your system. And I did my best to fix it, but I'm not an audio engineer, and I apologize if the sound is too grating to kind of deal with. A Moon and Cancer talisman, while a very similar setup in Western Europe and North America was. That comes down to not being able to get the day or the hour to work with us. So in a planetary talisman, we need either the day or the hour to be of that planet. So because we were trying to make a moon talisman, we needed either to be during the moon's planetary day, which is from sunrise to sunrise on a Monday, or during the moon's hour, which can be at any various times on some of the other days, or on any of the other days. And at this time for Australia, it will take place on a Tuesday, which is Mars's day, during a sun hour. And so that's what keeps it from being a really nice Moon and Cancer talisman. Instead, it will have to be a really nice Ninth Lunar Mansion talisman. Our next selection opportunity is one that everyone should be able to take advantage of, except for maybe people in Mountain and Pacific time in the North American continent. And that's going to be an election for a 10th Lunar Mansion. So the 10th Lunar Mansion is a really great mansion when it comes to health. It is probably, it is my second favorite mansion. I can say that pretty that sounds right to me. It's my second favorite mansion, but it is my first favorite mansion when it comes to health matters. It is such a strong preventative diagnostic talisman that I don't know why we have others. I guess it's for when the 10th Lunar Mansion is on vacation. That's why we have backups. But the 10th Lunar Mansion has time and time again just been able to pull some really amazing, I'm going to use the word stunts, to help people out of different health crises. And it primarily seems to work by affecting the physician. Most of the times this works through like a doctor kind of like having an idea or like knowing, kind of like having some intuitive movement to lead them to like the proper like test or whatever it is to find like the diagnosis, or try some sort of treatment that ends up being more effective than whatever was being worked on before. I also really recommend this talisman to people who are looking for a new doctor. Maybe they've like moved to a different area or been like referred to a specialist, or whatever reason you might be trying to like find another healthcare provider. The 10th Lunar Mansion is really great for doing this and making sure not only that we have a good doctor-patient relationship to start off with, but also that you're going to somebody who is open and willing and able to help you, which is not a universal experience that people have with healthcare. So any sort of thing we can have to help that process, the 10th lunar mansion is the best thing that we can have to do that. So I really recommend it if you're at all in that situation. And so going to our election for North America, that's going to be March 19th at 1341. And here we're going to have the moon, at the very end of Cancer, and she's going to be applying this trine to the sun. The Cancer is going to be on the first house cusp, so the moon's going to rule that, and the moon's going to be in that first house, which are all good things that we want. Normally, we would want the moon to be kind of right up there against the ascendant. The more angular, the better, but we're not able to do that because we are really close to this trine being perfected and moving on. 29:34 to 29:39, so it's like 20 minutes, 10 minutes-ish, 10-20 minutes before this aspect is done, is one and done. And so that's why this election might be very difficult for people, or maybe impossible for people in Mountain and Pacific time zones to get. So I'm really sorry about that. After this, the moon applies the square with Jupiter, and that's not bad. I don't hate that. The trine to the sun is better, but a aspect with the benefic planet Jupiter is better than something else. Like it could have been it could have gone straight to the opposition of Saturn. You know what I mean? So if you end up having to miss it because you're in those specific time zones, know that the square with Jupiter is an okay fallback. Obviously not ideal, but it's not. You're not like going into a trash fire. You're going into a lumpy mattress. The Western European and Northern African version is going to be March 19th at 1308, and here we have a little bit more room to take advantage of, and a much nicer setup, much less desperate or rushed than we do than North America did. We're going to have the moon in the 10th mansion on the ascendant. She's going to be applying that trine to the sun. The trine is about 3 degrees apart, which is about an hour and a half of clock time. Or no, it's not. It's about 6 hours of clock time. You double it. You don't divide it by 2. So you're going to have the full sort of normal amount of time that you would have for an election like this. The moon's still going to be slow. That's going to be true for the moon, like in this part of the zodiac overall. So that's not super ideal, but you're still going to have that nice connection with the sun, and the moon in the mansion she needs to be, as well as in the phase she needs to be. And then the Australian version is going to be March 19th at 21:04, so just after 9 at night. And here we're going to have it set up a little bit differently, mostly because the moon needs to be on the midheaven for this election to work out, rather than on the ascendant, like she was in the North American and Western European versions. She's still going to be applying that trine to the sun. She's going to have plenty of time to take advantage of that. You don't have to rush like you do for the North American version. And the ruler of the first house is going to be Mars here in Aquarius this time. And that's fine. You know, our biggest concern is that make sure that Mars, as the ruler of the first house, isn't afflicted. With Mars, that's going to be by Saturn and the Sun. And we don't have to worry about that. Mars is far enough away from Saturn where we don't have to worry about the conjunction. And then the conjunction with the Sun has already happened, so we don't have to worry about that for another year-ish. The ascendant degree is also not afflicted by Saturn specifically. We do kind of have this opposition with Jupiter, which is fine. Jupiter's not going to hurt anything. The opposition's not going to hurt anything there. So again, another solid 10th lunar mansion talisman to work with. And that's going to be our last election for the Australian continent. North America, Western Europe, and North Africa will have one more, and that will be for an 11th lunar mansion talisman. And the 11th lunar mansion has an interesting sort of intersection of powers that makes it very useful when it comes to career moves, specifically career moves that are sort of involved in like the corporate structure, kind of like corporate America stuff. So what I mean here is that the 11th lunar mansion is very useful for sort of like moving up the corporate ladder, getting a new job, being promoted, renegotiating like salary or benefits, things like that. So if that's something that you have your eye on for, this year or, in the nearest future, then take a look at, considering picking up this talisman when it comes available in your area. So for the North American version, this is going to take place on March 20th at 1541. So just a little bit before 4 p.m. And we're going to have the moon here in the ascendant in the 11th mansion, and she's going to be applying the square to Jupiter. So this is leaning a little bit more intentionally into that square of Jupiter that we weren't really wanting to, that we were trying to avoid as much as we could when it came to the 10th lunar mansion. Partly because the trine to the sun was much better for that one. It would have been much better for this one as well, but the square for Jupiter is something that we can take and work with, especially if we need something more short term. There might be a better election opportunity for the 12th mansion. There might be a better election opportunity for the 11th mansion as we move into the next month and the sun goes into Aries. We might be able to get something really nice out of there. I haven't looked yet. But for now, a square to Jupiter isn't terrible. Jupiter is a benefic planet that's going to do its best to help us, and a square aspect is better than no aspect except for oppositions, which are trash. So we still have everything that we need there. We have the sun here on the cusp of the 9th house as a ruler of the 1st house. It's not afflicted by Saturn. It's not afflicted by Mars. The ascendant's not afflicted by Saturn or Mars either. So we have everything that we need here. Again, the moon is just really slow, but that square, that aspect is tight. It's about 3 degrees. So this can be a great talisman to kind of help us get the ball rolling for things. Because even if we do have a situation where next month maybe we're able to upgrade, quote unquote, to the sun in Aries, maybe we can get the moon trine the sun in Aries. The moon will still be slow. We'll still be dealing with a slow moon there. So keep an eye on that. Of course, tune back here next month. I'll be able to tell you if we have one or not and what that looks like. Maybe that's an upgrade. But for now, if you're thinking about making some career moves, consider picking up this talisman when it comes around. And then Western Europe and Northern Africa is going to have a chart that looks very much the same, almost exactly the same, for March 20th at 1412. And here we're going to have the moon, of course, in the 11th mansion, just starting in the 11th mansion. And applying that square to Jupiter. So again, Jupiter is a benefic planet. It's going to do what it can to help us get where we need to go. Square is not the most ideal connection to have with the planet. We would definitely want like a conjunction or a trine. Those would be our S tier aspects, we'll say. Square is more like a B tier, we'll say. But it's there. It can get the job done. It's a connection. It's what we need, and it can kind of help lay the foundation for whatever sort of career or goals that we might have to get us where we want to go. But all right, everybody, thank you guys so much for tuning in and for watching. I really appreciate you being here and listening, going through all of the elections that we have. We're going to move into eclipse season after this, and that can be a little dreadful for a lot of people. I know I don't particularly like them. So having a nice list of talismans available to kind of help counter any sort of negative effects of the eclipse that might be coming to us, or kind of help mitigate them, is really something useful to have. So I really appreciate that the universe gave us this, because depending on where you are, you'll have the 3rd lunar mansion for all good things, the 10th lunar mansion for health, the 11th lunar mansion for career goals. So if the eclipses, like especially the lunar eclipse, is happening, affecting any of those areas of the chart, like the 1st house, the 10th house, or whatever, then maybe one of these talismans can help kind of soften the blow or whatever, or take advantage of whatever kind of winds of change and sort of like turmoil the eclipse might be bringing into your life. So it's always really good to kind of have that mindset of it, because the eclipse is going to happen no matter what. But that doesn't mean that the effects of the eclipse are necessarily set in stone. We do have some power to negotiate what that looks like to us, and one of the primary ways of doing that is through astrological magic and astrological foreknowledge. That's why we're here, is to have an idea of what's going to happen, so we know how to take the best advantage of that. So I definitely recommend doing that, taking a look and seeing where these eclipses are falling, where you think the easiest way for them to come out might be, and whether or not any of these talismans coming up in your area can help you to avoid whatever sort of worst case scenario you might be expecting or that you might be worried about. But again, thank you all for watching. Special shout out to my patrons. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your support. And if you're interested in supporting the channel and are not a patron, consider looking into that and a lot of the fun extra bonuses that come with that. But until then, I will see you all again on our Aries solar eclipse. May God have mercy on our souls.